All right, bringing back one of our favorite guests on the program. It's none other than RikkiDee joining us on Lulz today as we discuss a very tough topic. Is DFS dying? You guys have heard Brian be a little pessimistic about the state of the industry going forward with the rise of Sims, and we are going to discuss with Ricky, a professional player, how he is thinking about the landscape as we enter the 2023 NFL season. Let's do it.
Does he think? I think he thinks this. He thinks this is a go. Vegas Dave thinks this is a go.
Hot naked girls doing yoga.
What?
Why don't you just win like a man?
Random.org. Type in 1 for yes, 2 for no, and let the DFS gods pick for you.
And I'm absolutely begging you not to dupe us. Please don't dupe us.
All right, RikkiDee back on Lulz, bop into the music. How are we doing, buddy?
Not bad. Thanks for having me back on. Hope to keep the positive vibes out here, keep an open mind, even though in my deepest hearts, I feel like, we're looking at the end here.
Wow. Yeah, Brian, why don't you set the table, because you had kind of conceived of this show premise a couple weeks back. You've also been talking on some of the sim shows about how things feel pretty bleak from your perspective as far as the ecosystem. So let people know where you're at and what you're thinking for this episode.
I was thinking we could do kind of sort of, like the State of the Union every year at the White House, kind of a state of DFS. I want to kind of say the state of gambling, but I don't know if we could consider ourselves experts in all forms gambling. But I mean, we both played poker professionally and DFS professionally for a long time. I've sports bet at a professional level. Haven't won at a professional level. And kind of like be as impartial as we can on what's going on, just some top random ideas, or like, obviously the Sims, the Sim Wars, pricing for all the content out there. Just the content in general, right? Like there wasn't even decent projections, I don't know, 4 years ago. The rise of best ball, sports betting, how all these, legislation is something we talked about on this show for years, and like how that can be a noose that's slowly tightening around the average player, because we have no voice there. And so the rake will go up, the competition will go down, was kind of the thesis of this show. All these kind of things, are they coming to a head? Is 2023 the last year? Was it 2022? Was it 2027? And I know some pros seem kind of optimistic still on Twitter. So I want to hear from them too. But who better than to bring on RikkiDee and have him give his take. I don't know if I'm going to be pushing back much on anything he has to say. I don't know exactly what he's going to say, but I have an idea. So I don't know, just kind of that kind of idea of like, and we could like think of it from different perspectives too, not just ours. There's, I don't know how many MLB maxers there are. There's like not many, 20 maybe left or something like that. So it's a really, really small pool that we're talking about. But, for your average guy, for someone looking, what do I want to play? All these kind of topics. I'm kind of rambling at this point, but that's broad enough for you, huh, Pete?
Yeah. So Ricky, why don't you set the table for us? Maybe you could let people know kind of what you've been playing recently. You've obviously heard us talk about the Sim stuff. I'm sure you've been thinking about it a lot lately. Where are you at with everything right now?
Yeah, I've been playing baseball every year up until this year, basically. And I'm coming. Let's all keep this in perspective. I've always had like a sort of, I'm looking for a way out of the old gambling industry, the old, all this stuff. So I'm always kind of like seeing ghosts a little bit more than some of the other pros that we kind of know, because it's sort of my natural inclination to get away from this unhealthy lifestyle and all that. So take everything I say with a little bit of a grain of salt there. But yeah, so once the baseball season started this year, and I started to see some of the developments and some of these new sim guys using the Osmo product, the stochastic product, they're really crushing like really early. Like the Colts like won like, I don't know, 8 or 9 like GPPs in like April or something like that. And I don't know if that's continued, but I was just starting to look at the writing on the wall there. I'm like, oh, I knew he was using this behind the scenes sim product they're about to release. And I knew that Saber Sim was developing it. And I'm pretty sure like ETR is developing one too. And I'm just sitting there thinking, like I've been using Sims, and obviously it's been a nice competitive edge for a while, but it's just one of those things you start to see like how everything's progressed. And it's like, nothing ever really kills these edge games. Like there's no like just falls off a cliff just because like one product gets released here or there. And it's happened with poker and like, when they started doing, training sites, obviously that was like a big shift in strategy. And then when they were doing like range analysis, and that was another kind of shift. But then, it was just like kind of a slow burn downwards. But you start to see the trends, and it starts to become, there's never an obvious time when you say, okay, it's officially dead or whatever. But I just took it on myself and said, well, with the baseball season, it's a grind. I kind of just wanted my own, summer to myself. And, I kind of just took the rest of the summer off once I started to realize that my edge is just kind of dwindling, not really having that much fun. And just sort of prepare for the future and try to figure out maybe there's a way out here or something else I could focus on. That would be more profitable. Because sometimes with this stuff with edge gambling, you kind of grind yourself down, the edges dwindle. You kind of get in a frog in a boiling pot of water situation. And, you can survive for a lot longer than maybe you could theorize, but do you really want to be in that situation where you're just kind of like grinding out these micro edges and you could go back, run cold way longer? And so I'm just kind of using my foresight, living through the poker, boom and bust and everything, trying to use that sort of, same mindset to predict when this is going to be that same type of scenario for DFS and try to maybe look at something else on the horizon.
I want to pull up a quick comment here because I do want to make sure we're putting ourselves in the shoes of the majority of the listeners here. And I realize no one wants to cry for people who have an edge that's dwindling, but this is a really backwards take on this, because if these guys who are using advanced level sims are getting worried about the ecosystem, it is far, far worse for the little guy. I mean, if their edges are getting, reduced by margins, ours are getting reduced in such a massive way. So this would not be my take. Dave Wilson says pro edges reduced. What's not to like? A shot for the little guy to survive. There's no surviving here.
Yeah, I don't think it really works like that. It's kind of a zero-sum game. We're just getting a smaller and smaller piece of the pie, And I think there's a small chance for like people who like are little early adopters to this new sim, sim tools that are available. There's a lot of learning curve with there. There's a lot of pitfalls that you can like start to get ahead of. Yeah, so maybe there's a small chance you could like rise up a little bit into like this like kind of medium world. But it's just something that like you have to look at the forest for the trees here and realize that this is just going to be, a collective, increase of edge for everyone who's playing and taking it seriously.
Yeah. And little guy, like how are you defining that? Like the little guy who can afford, $5K in entries plus $700 in projection sites fees and simulation fees. And, it's like, who is this little, and I mean, I guess if you are in that boat, you technically you could now probably pay for some sim. You still like, it's not good enough yet where you can just press a button, but
Right.
You have to learn some things, some tricks to try to make it give you something profitable. But it would be a good time for that type of guy to pay for that service. And maybe you got, a year, 6 months, year and a half, I don't know, where and then eventually my guess is the price is going to come down on all these sims over the next few years to where, you'd be dumb not to use it. And it'll just be, people who are completely oblivious, making lineups on the toilet, and then everyone else is just paying their $20 a month or whatever, $50 a month and pressing a button is kind of where I see something like that. That might be a little too simplified, but that's so like the little guy is the guy in the toilet, in my opinion, and he has like zero chance. Everyone, any lineup really can win. It's unless you make something completely backwards. What RikkiDee said too earlier, I wanted to add a quick comment too. Another version of this guy he was describing of like figuring out before other pros whether you should leave or something. Also, like success can be really detrimental in not just gambling, probably in everything. Where if you run really hot, I mean, you got a lot of money to burn, so like that's one thing, but you also can convince yourself, I think, or rationalize. Oh no, the industry's great. I mean, I won 1,500 Ks in the first half of the season. It's easy peasy. And the variance in these suckers are friggin' insane, which is another reason why the edge shrinking is a little different than poker too, because was the edge shrank in poker, you're still not going to go busto that easily if you were good. You know what I mean? Like you could lose, like in No Limit Hold'em. PLO is a little bit different story, but like No Limit Hold'em, if you had like 40 buy-ins and you didn't stink, like it would be tough to go broke back in the day. All the way up to Black Friday, I would say. So like, but in DFS, you could lose for a whole season very easily, even a couple of years ago. And now you shrink those edges. And you could very easily just not win, and it's not your fault. Even it's just that you have like a 4% edge or something, and that's just going to happen when you roll the sims of bankroll variance over and over again. You might be that guy.
Well, and the other thing I think people, if they're, trying to not put themselves in the shoes of like the entire ecosystem of why this bad. If players like Brian and RikkiDee don't want to play anymore, like 150 maxers and people who play all the contests, they are the lifeblood of the site. They're what allow these contests to be big, to have top heavy prize pools. If those guys start playing less, then the prize pools get smaller. Then there's less $1 million up top, 6 figures up top, which means less phone shitter bros feel compelled to build a lineup on their phone for a small prize pool. So like it is an ecosystem. It's like just because one predator takes out some prey, that's bad for the entire thing if that gets wiped out.
Yeah, and like we obviously haven't seen like a drastic reduction in any of these prize pools yet. Like all the week 1 gains for NFL are pretty much in line with previous years. I haven't really been following baseball too much, but it seems like it's relatively, I don't know, what do you say, Brian? Like seems like it's in the same range of, of prize pools. But again, it's kind of one of these, like I said, it will be more of a slow burn. And that's why I think anyone freaking out about any of these things is probably jumping the gun a little bit. But it is sort of that, like, these moments provide these, these perspectives and these inflection points. And you can start to say, okay, well, maybe I start to shift one way or another. And, maybe look at some of the other gambling options in the world, or maybe actually find something positive to do with your life and, contribute somewhere else and start getting sucked into these like easy money situations that we are addicted to.
The little guy and Pete, I didn't completely, I might be giving the same point you just gave, Pete, but like speaking of the little guy again, when they're spending $300 for a sim, whatever else on projections, add it all up, that's money that's not going into DFS. Right. So, those are the guys, that's like a month's worth of entry fees or something.
Yeah.
You add all that stuff up. If they have an optimizer and whatever, who knows?
Right. And it just makes it, not only are they needing to beat the rake, they're needing to beat their overhead costs for all of those tools and resources and content, which is very hard. Ricky, how about like a counterpoint to this stuff? Because I've seen you tweeting about best ball a little bit lately and joking about how awful our ROIs are. Best ball is massively growing. People are going to have horrendous ROIs. There are going to be a ton of losing players. It's hard to beat the rake. These are top heavy contests. And yet people love drafting teams. Why do you think like best ball can grow with these kind of similar realities, maybe compared to DFS?
Well, I think it's funny because when DFS started, I was just playing it casually like everyone else sort of. And then I just never assumed that there was this big skill edge between, the way that you could build your team with optimizers and simulations and all that stuff versus just, basically using your gut instinct to building a team. And then there ended up being that. And then I kind of have the same perspective with best ball because I'm not like, super into it or anything. And I just look at how it's built and I'm like, okay, I guess you could have an edge here and there, to like, correlate your teams a little bit. You could be better at rankings. But then I start to build in the time element of it being like, okay, you got at least an hour to draft your team. You got to wait, 8 months to get your payout. It's kind of like the worst form of gambling I can imagine. It takes long to, set your bet and get paid out. But I do understand the appeal to like the casual guy, right? Because it's much more accessible. They're much more familiar with the whole process of drafting, and they don't have to worry about, competing against guys who've already sort of solved the games. So I see that shift as like a very logical step for the casual guys to kind of shift towards too. And you guys got it, like the content game is much more compelling, right? Like what you guys are doing constantly with ship chasing and all these like, things that I watch from time to time. It's like, it's fun to watch your shows. It's fun to kind of draft along and sort of like, build yourself a story. And there's all these like ways you can sell it in the same kind of sense that poker was, right? Like you guys always talk about that, where there's these, compelling personalities playing the game. You can kind of like buy into that. And I don't think like best ball's gotten there yet exactly with like, especially because there's not really like a lot of high stakes action in that regard, but I can see the appeal and the reason why it is catching on. I just think it's I'm still kind of bearish on the idea that it's going to be some huge profitable, like professional career or job type thing. Like a lot of these other like poker and DFS and like some of these other things have. So that's why I'm there.
I mostly agree with all that. I think it's way more compelling. The live draft aspect, you could do it in person. They can easily do like an ESPN style show, which would be way more interesting than watching nerds do DFS simulations. The best bro, the best ball tools aren't nearly as good, right? Like, and I'm not sure they can be as good. You have a lot more control in DFS, which is where your edge comes from. I'm thinking back to when I first started playing DFS. What made me go like, oh, the light bulb, like I should go try to do this full time, is you could play every table, right? Where poker back in the day, like if you were good, you could do like 20, maybe still concentrate. Some people could go higher, but they were just trying to get supernova. And but you could, back in the day, there was no limit, so you could play like the quarter entry, the 50 cent, blah blah blah. And if you could make your own decent projections. Like you just, who cares? You get 3%, 4%, 5%. This was my theory anyways. You just keep, just enter everything against everyone on the site. And over time, you'll get like some small edge. Before I started thinking about simulations and stuff. So but now you can't play the smaller fields. There's maxes everywhere. Those days are long gone. But with best ball, the only slight disagreement I think is because I think the day of best ball tournaments are going to get bigger. So like the Sunday, 100K to first or something like that, I bet those will start popping this year.
Now that's a spot where you could imagine a lot of edge because there's a lot of dynamic news. There's a lot of things changing, because with ADP and everything set all season long before the season starts, it's really hard to beat the market on those types of things. But when you talk about a dynamic market like that, you start to introduce a lot of edge cases, and especially with like late breaking news or whatever. I don't know, Pete. What do you think? Like the EV of these drafts that you're doing are like? Is it? I know you do a lot for content specifically, but I know you talk to guys who like are in sole belief that this is like, well worth their time. And I'm just kind of curious your take there.
Well, I think it's, especially the content, like I'm streaming all my best ball mania drafts. Like the expectation for an average 150 maxer is 1 out of every 8 150 maxer will get one team to the finals. And then you need to finish top 10 to even feel something on the prize money. Yeah. So like, if you're not going into these contests with open eyes, the feedback I get from people when they're like, launch another puppy, launch another $5 draft, people just fucking love to draft and it's just fun. Yeah. And so I have no problems with that. What I have a problem with is at the end of the season, when everyone's like, I drafted really good teams, why is my ROI bad? It's like, well, you were playing massively top heavy contests. Now they, Underdog does release these smaller contests where, yeah, if you would rather draft only one Rottweiler team for 350, your ROI, if you think you have an edge, is probably going to be better. I also think people like, I have a fucking Underdog sign over my shoulder, but if you're just chasing ROI, go hit the overlay on drafters. That contest is like 40% filled. Like go do those things, but people don't want to because they like drafting on underdog. It's fun. And so as long as people are honest with themselves, are you just an ROI edge hunter? You better be very specific about where you're playing and the contest you're playing. If you just like fucking drafting teams, and how can I blame you for that? Then yeah, like live it up. But I just think sometimes people want to have their cake and eat it too. And it's not realistic in a super competitive market.
Yeah, and I think like there's a big difference between people who play, gambling for fun and then other people who try to make a living out of it. I mean, I've been trying to champion the getting away from trying to make a living out of it. I don't think it's a very positive way to live, and I think we should, like, as a collective group of people who've done it for a while, like we're kind of like this plague of locusts that like hits these edge games like all at once. We go all in, we try to get there before the money's dry. And, and then we just move from one to the next. And I just feel like it's super predatory and just like, it doesn't really get you anywhere, like in terms of like meaningful life and all that type of shit. But like, yeah, like I think we can approach this best ball stuff, do it much more like it's an obvious, like sort of next thing on the frontier. But then there's just approach it from a much more casual standpoint and you'll enjoy it a lot more. I mean, that's my perspective. Obviously, it's not everyone's like that. Everyone's going to look for the quick buck, but
yeah, casual, none of this applies. Like if you just enjoy making DFS lineups and watching Red Zone, which is actually kind of fun, right? Football Sundays is a great DFS day. Then do whatever you want. I would push back a little bit on this predatory. Maybe we could talk about this a little bit. I don't really.
That's more philosophical, yeah.
I mean, it's like I've said a million times, gambling's entertainment, like full stop. And like, I watch shows, TV shows I pay for, movies I pay for that fucking stink all the time. And I didn't have a good time. And, you know what I mean? And they didn't do it. They weren't predators on me. Right. Some people might even argue they are actually, but
yeah,
it's completely my choice. And I recognize that I might not win and the show or movie be good. You know what I mean? And so, like, I don't think the vast majority of people who enter DFS or best ball think they are going to win $1 million. There's always a small portion of people who have delusions of grandeur, granted. But, like, I don't think that's reflective of reality. Like, if you did some sort of realistic polling of people entering, they're just dudes looking to have fun or entertainment, or maybe they think they have an edge that day. And also to like, maybe they do. I mean, on any given slate, if we play 1 million slates, yeah, they're probably not going to win unless they have some sort of advanced process. But like, even still, I don't think that matters. Like, I think it's just like they have a negative, $2 out of the $10 entry or $3 on their $10 entry, and they're going to win the $1 million once every 100,000 years. But it's fun to sweat in the first half of Red Zone and then throw your phone against the wall and then go, all right, let me go look at my home league team. Like everyone knows what's going on. I think. I just don't. Yeah. I don't like the predatory thing.
I just think people, maybe not predatory, more just like this idea that because we're winning money or trying to win money, that's sort of like inherently good or fine. Like, let's say like, so it's more unhealthy, obvious. Like, let's say you could just like get paid for like drinking beer or something, would that be justifiable as like something that would be, hey mom, look, or like, like that would be something you'd like wake up like at the end of your life, like, hey, I got drunk every day, but I got paid $100K to do it. So if you take to these extremes, I started to think about, like, this is more of just my own sort of like personal bias, but that's what I kind of mean. Like when you're just going from one little, money-making activity to the next. And that's when we talk about DFS dying and stuff, like you try to find some other new way out and satisfy those desires or whatever. I just start to think of it more broadly and say, hey, is there anything else we can do? But I guess it just,
I think of it more like your analogy. It's more like Joey Chestnut. Right? It's like you should be exactly. Hundreds of hot dogs, but this man has put in a lot of time and effort. They all know the game. It's a competitive environment. It's entertaining, right? If we're going to go down that route. But yeah, if you eat 100 hot dogs a day, that life is probably not fulfilling.
On the entertainment aspect, because the issue, right, is that if, one of the things I think we're saying with best ball is like those tools are coming. It's an inevitability as well. The field's going to get sharper. There's going to be like gigabrain drafters who get really good. And yet the aspect of drafting in the community and the ecosystem is still a really fun thing to be a part of. And that's where DFS is kind of lacking, right? And Brian and I have talked over the years, like, let's get more DFS head-to-heads. Like, let's get more chasing the goats and all this stuff to build up characters like the old school DFS that made it fun. Like, people want to go sit down at the poker table because they get to watch these guys be larger than life personalities. And I do wonder if that's really ultimately what's missing, because there are people, myself included, who want to build a couple lineups on a Sunday and have a sweat, even if we know that we're going to be bleeding money in the long term. But you only want to do that if it's fun and if the ecosystem is supporting that. And like, it doesn't feel, I feel like that's the biggest concern. Like, we're going to have content. People still like the puzzle, but like, maybe the question isn't, is DFS dying, but like, is DFS still fun? Like, can we make it fun for people who know that they don't have a huge edge?
I mean, I've been shocked for years that people who, are marginal at best winners, probably losing, are still rocking 100. Like, especially like I see a lot of names in the 150s that I basically, you look at their lineups, I'm like, these guys have just no chance, but they're in there every single week. I'm like, man, how long do these guys have it in them to just keep, how enjoyable is this game to them that they just are going to keep punting money sort of indefinitely? And then you start to look at exactly what they're getting out. That's what I want to talk about here is like, what are you really getting out of these behaviors and what are you getting out of this activity?
Yeah. And I wonder for you guys too, like, cause Ricky, it does seem like you've kind of always had like your 1 foot out or like looking for like your exit strategy. Like, if you're super honest with yourself, how much of it is like, hey, there's still an edge here. There's ROI. I'm just going to hammer that versus there's a familiarity. There's an inertia to it. This is what I do. I know how to do it. It doesn't require a lot of lift. And then you're kind of looking around and kind of wondering, hey, it would probably take some work to go be in another industry and like understand that. Not that you couldn't do it. I'm sure you're fully capable, but it would require probably a lot more work than just showing up at the DFS office for another day.
For sure. And I think that's like one of the biggest eye-opening experiences you can have is with what you got to be really honest with yourself in terms of like what you're really getting out of these, day-to-day activities. Are you just like you said, is it just a comfort thing? You don't want to go anywhere else. And that's why I kind of feel like this like never ending locust chase for the next edge game. Like it was crypto for a while, it was Bitcoin, whatever, there's these little things that we all sort of like follow and then move on from. And at the end of the day, I just feel like, yeah, you can make money along the way, but like, what was it for?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's an important question for sure. The way I look at it though is slightly different. Like I think more back to like young me, and all of us actually, none of this stuff was around. Right. And if you could have told me I could play like GoldenEye for a living, when I was, a teen or whatever, I would have been like, what? Fuck yes. Sign me up. What, like how fantastic would this be? You know what I mean? I just see it as something I was already super interested in, and I can make a living off of it. So like it's really a blessing if you compare it to different eras of human existence. 100 years ago, could you imagine? Like you'd be working on a farm or worse, and not that working on a farm is like the worst thing these days, maybe, but you'd be doing some like back-breaking labor, some shitty boss that would happen today.
Yeah, right? But maybe you'd be happy.
Shitty boss. Like there's just so many positives behind it. But like if you want to look at it, is it contributing to humanity and all these sorts of things? Like very little. Like I do think we are a small cog in the entertainment industry. Like as small as that is, like keeping games going for a DFS, but it is just entertainment. But like there's like do you think like a guy who like builds sets for Law and Order, like is this guy contributing greatly?
Broadly specific, I'm here for this reference.
I wouldn't ask the question of like contribute. I just look at it from a personal like, do you feel like satisfied with like what you are accomplishing, right? And like, yeah, there's a lot of like personal growth, learning how to sim, learning code, whatever you want to ask there. But like, this is getting a little bit, high level philosophical, but it's just more like, when you ask these questions of DFS is dying, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. What's next? You just keep chasing these like additional carrots, and you got to ask yourself, is this the path I want to go down? Just keep chasing the new thing and try to find an edge and then beat the crowd there. Or is there some other way? And I guess I'm not sure either way, but I think that's the question I'm asking more is like, then it's like, is this purposeful or like meaningful for society?
That I totally agree with, like on an individual level, for sure. Like working, maybe starting your own business and something completely unrelated might be more fulfilling or something like that is completely valid. I think you can have a much more balanced work-life health situation with DFS than you could with poker. Poker was pretty bad for you in my time doing it. So like, I think that's different. Like I saw Jungle Man or something, a tweet the other day. I don't know if you guys saw, he was passed out at the table.
Really?
It's like, this can't be healthy for you. I think he's a healthy guy, but what do I know? I don't pay attention to that stuff anymore, but
I did always find it ironic because like I've heard a lot of poker players say it and DFS to an extent. And I get where it's coming from, that, the beauty of these games or becoming professionals at them is the freedom it affords you. And yet the barbell side of that freedom is being tethered to a table for really long sessions or being tethered to your computer. It's like, how much freedom actually is there if it requires that much time in one spot? That doesn't seem like total freedom to me.
Yeah.
You can't have total freedom though. I mean, try not paying your taxes and send them a letter. See how they treat you, Pete.
Hey, let's not get political, Brian.
but like, I mean, like someone has a real job. Like you can't go, hey, let's go golfing. Like 99% of the time, they're like, I'm at work, you dummy. I can't just like go golfing, but I can, and I can after, like, even because I could bring my phone. It's comparatively, it's pretty fucking free, and you could do it anywhere in the world almost. Well, now that they got the geolocation stuff, maybe not, but
so Rikki, like, so it sounds like, are you going to be scaling back your play this year? I mean, you crushed NFL Showdown last year, or is it going to be business as usual for you?
Well, I mean, I've had moments, especially in DFS, where I've had like really good seasons and then like a steep drop off the next. I'm always preparing for those types of things. I do feel like with the Sims, I do kind of suspect there's going to be a sharp drop off for me in terms of results. So I'm going to be cautiously approaching that. But I'll still be in the streets, probably max entering most games you see. It's hard to just give up. It's hard to just try to predict your demise and then like stop playing before you actually start losing, right? So there's a lot of wait and see approach here too. I'm just more talking theoretically from a longer term perspective, and then try to approach it from like what's possibly next.
How can you not run it back? Oh my goodness, no, you got.
I know it's
season. Give me a break.
It's in us to like like as a human, you're just always gonna be like, well, you're just never gonna give up when you're like winning. So
right. Yeah. But you might want to just like cash out all that and never play again too. Like you could always do that. Like, you can't. You gotta run it back. I will say this is kind of unrelated, but I would I subscribing to these Sims Showdown. You're fine for now.
Well, how's baseball season been going? Like, have you noticed it? Like any general shift in like teams that you see, or like
it's hard to tell because of variance, but this year for sure I've taken more top 10s without first than ever in baseball, and the high stakes I think I've been running bad, but who knows, obviously. And normally I do pretty goddamn well in high stakes MLB, and this year I haven't. But I find the Sims are less helpful the smaller the field is.
Yeah, I can see that.
So that could just be variance or I stink. But the I think the main takeaway these Sims do is the post lock Sims, which analyzes how you did based off of that site's projections. Until they update to allow you to upload whatever projections you want, it's based off of theirs. And what it shows from what I've been seeing is a lot less of the 150 maxers are profitable. So the argument is, well, that's based off of the site's projections that they provide. So of course it'll just show the ones that use closest to stochastics will be good in stochastics. The closest to Saber Sims will be Saber Sim. Run the Sims will be the same if they do post lock eventually, which is very true. But the percentage of winners should be about the same in each one.
That's true.
And that percentage is pretty low. Like it varies obviously, but like 9 to 10, sometimes only like 3 guys are profitable on the slate. So that is very bearish in my opinion.
Do you think people look at that type of data and have a rational response and say, "Ooh, this is bad. Like look how hard these games are." Like reveal the curtain sort of thing. Like, oh shit, like we're now dealing with reality here? Or do you think people are always gonna be like, well, maybe that's wrong for my data. It's right for everyone else, but for me, it got my thing wrong here or there.
I think that meme where it's got like the dumb guy on the left and then the bell curve and then the Jedi guy on the right. I think you have to be those two for looking at that and thinking you can beat it, because I think you kind of have to be crazy to get really good at something and go like, oh no, I could still beat Michael Jordan. You have to have that insane mindset, but it happens to also be the same mindset of the dummies who keep playing and don't care. Yeah. So like, I do think that people look at that and they don't care, and they should. But also, if you do, like, you can still clearly still win. Like, there's still people winning at DFS. So you kind of still have to be able to believe that you could win to do it. And, back to the post-contest Sims, that also pretty much kind of shows how you should still be getting your edge is actually your takes, which I would consider making projections. I would never do it by hand, but that's some people do it by hand and win apparently. I don't know how, but you could, if you could get
just use your gut feel, like the the real men of the games.
Sure, why not? If that works, it works. But like that is kind of because you can make better Sims. You can, like they don't have it fully figured out yet, and they don't have, in my opinion, like there's some tricks they don't know yet. But but I imagine it's just around the corner, or they'll get, or it doesn't matter. Like it'll get enough people close enough where the edge is so small that even your tricks won't. Perfect timing.
Made it.
This has been doom and gloom. So
yeah, this has been really depressing.
Let's hear the bull case.
All right, Travis. Yeah, tell us why DFS is alive and well. The hand builders can make it. They can fight these sim bros.
I'll tell you what, the Sims are overrated. And when all these sim bros use the same projections and the same Sims, they're all going to overlap each other. And then the hand builders, we're coming back.
Yeah,
it's a revival.
See, with NBA, I feel like there's always like with your process, there's so much in fluctuation every day. Like with the NBA, I think you're safe. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of like sort of manual, dodging and weaving that you can still do, especially because it's just such a long season and people get burnt out. But the other sports are a lot less susceptible to that type of variance.
Yeah, I agree. The sports take less skill, like baseball, whatnot, or gonna get crushed by the Sims, but the sports like NBA would take all the skill. We'll be fine.
Yeah.
So Petty, don't you think though, like for sure, like at the start, right? Like people are going to be using the same things, but isn't the idea that the Sims are going to get more sophisticated? The users of the Sims are going to get more sophisticated. They're going to know how to leverage them to where they're not duping with everyone else. Like, doesn't that maturation happen at some point?
Sure. I mean, I guess it depends player by player, right? Like for people who play high stakes already, you're already playing sophisticated players every single day. So it's not going to be that much different playing, I guess if you're playing low stakes, it could be an issue for those guys who are just beating up on guys who don't know what they're doing every day. But I think for guys who are playing mid stakes and high stakes, you're already playing a pretty sophisticated field.
If you look at, if you like review Pet's lineups in NBA and stuff, sometimes he'll have like 50% Karl Anthony Towns in the field. He'll have like 4% or 5%.
You love that.
And it's that is strange, right? Like that's like one of those old moments where where they're trying to figure out poker and then the computer would tell them this weird result. And you're like, why would you do that? Because it's pretty strange for NBA to have some crazy exposures like that. So that's a huge edge if you can figure that stuff out over any sim, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then also too, what he's alluding to is the sims would all be the same. I think that's definitely happening in MLB with the ownership and stuff. There is a herding effect that like leads more lineups to the clear like Simbro lineups that a sim would tell you to play, which of course that's more combos now you're playing against, and it changes the whole thing. So there is kind of like this cat and mouse game that can go on. I will say this with Petty's thing though, like he could still use a simulator and just put his info into it and get even more out of it. Do you disagree with that?
I don't know if that's necessarily true. I've been told that many times.
Yeah. It depends on what else you're doing. So like, obviously there could be some other things you're doing where you can't change it, but I just feel like you would have to then pay a coder to add that extra layer, because there's nothing they can code it. Cause like at the end of the day, it's just numbers next to a player's name that you're entering. Right. And like,
Sure.
They can arrange it the way you want. So like, I feel like it would just help you. But I mean, why break, why, fix what's not broken? So I get it, but I still think even for someone like you that a sim would help.
I get it, but at the same time, there are stuff that I don't do right now. Like I don't look at ownership projections and stuff like that. Whereas if I go to a random site and look at their ownership projections and they're way off, it's just going to throw my whole process off. And I think that's a big issue with kind of the herding thing you're talking about. A lot of people use the same exact stuff. So when ownership's off, it's way off because everybody's doing the same exact thing. They're like, oh, say Karl-Anthony Towns is supposed to be 20%. So, I'm not going to play him. All of a sudden he's 4% and he's a smash.
But you could program that into your sim. So like your field would be more representative of what you think it's going to be.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean.
Yeah.
But I feel like my projections are so different though. How would I be able to create a field of everybody else? I guess I don't know how to do that, the ownership stuff. So I wouldn't even know where to start. I don't trust the sites.
Well, but with these sites that you can kind of do that right now.
Yeah, but there's going to be a big gap in like trying to understand how to create your own field and create your opponent's lineups versus your own base set. I mean, that's going to be a big, leap of knowledge a lot of people are going to have to develop.
Yeah.
There's a lot to it. Yeah.
Maybe I don't know enough about it, but I feel pretty comfortable with where I'm at.
I was going to say, yeah, we invited Pet on. We didn't know if he was going to make it because also one of the reasons I saw he's staking. I don't know if you saw this, Pete, on Twitter. Yeah. He's staking NBA players. So now to talk about the bearish case, that is the most bullish case the DFS pro out there to actually stake people.
Wait, what a bait!
Yeah, tell us about this.
All of a sudden, well, I'll tell you about it. I think I got about 80 DMs with applications. And
are they all touts?
There's a lot of touts. I won't say other than Pete. No, Pete didn't actually DM me. But there's a lot of good players is what I've learned looking at graphs and stats. I'm actually surprised how many good players there are.
Yeah. And so what was the impetus for this? Just trying to get more action down, scaling up what you can get down?
Yeah, just trying to make a little more money. Like that's the whole point of the game, right?
Are you going to be like masterminding this whole operation? You're going to be like,
I'm not coaching. I'm not coaching.
Okay.
No. I was asked that. And I made that very clear. So I know in poker, staking generally, you got some coaching as well. This is purely just to give you money to scale up because a lot of guys are stuck in the low mid stakes that are really good because they just don't have the bankroll play high.
And so can you promise everyone in the terms of service in DraftKings that you weren't inspired by JMac and are just looking for other people to play with?
I can't say I wasn't inspired by JMac. How about that? No,
was JMac one of the ones asking?
I can, I'm not gonna say anyone after this. He was not one of the guys though.
Okay.
He was definitely not one of the guys. I wish he was.
Is there anyone you can dox that slid into your DMs?
I wish I would. I wish I would, but I won't. There's some interesting guys though. Some big time crushers that I haven't seen in a while.
So how are you? Because this is interesting to me, Petty, that you would be willing to do it without the coaching element, because isn't that the whole thing? Like, you have this special sauce, this domain expertise here that you're not scared of the sim bros because of it. Like, I would assume you were like, hey, let me train this army of petty theft type minds. Why do you think these other people who don't do what you do can consistently beat the games?
Because there are guys that are like me. There's a lot of guys like me. They're just not as loud and touting on websites. I've realized there's some guys.
You are very loud and flashy, Petty. Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely me. Yeah, no, there's a lot of guys like me. They're just not as loud. They're quiet, but they do similar stuff that I do. And if I taught an army of me, that would be way more scary to me than these sim bros that are coming out of nowhere. I'm not worried about the sim bros.
Well, one more question then. Why? Clearly you've scouted, you see the guys, the lineups, the stuff like that. Why not reach out to them directly? Why do an open casting call where you're going to get just a bunch of randoms that are probably not up to snuff?
Well, there was a lot of guys. I saw many graphs where I was like, what are you hoping for? Let me stake your like negative 30% ROI. That happened a lot more than it should have.
That's what I mean.
I would not know who these guys were if they didn't DM me.
Okay.
There's names that I've never heard in my life. Guy, I don't look at Fantasy Cruncher or these websites after slates and like look at exposures. It's very rare for me. So I don't know who's doing well. So maybe that's why these names are surprised when they're doing pretty well.
And so what did you had them send you what, their roto tracker or something?
Yeah, the rotor trackers, certain stats, and from there, I kind of just talked to them, asked the process, and almost done with everybody.
Interesting. How many horses do you think you're going to end up with?
2. Not many.
That's reasonable.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And then what are you gonna stake him in? The main field, the main like $15?
Yeah. So for example, one guy who just declined my offer, he plays about 1,500 a night, and I wanted to get him up to 6K, and he didn't like the profit split, so we weren't able to make a deal.
Okay. Yeah. And like, I'm trying to think, what would you give on a profit split, RikkiDee? I know yours would be 0 because you don't want to do it, but if you were forced, like what 80, 60, no, 60, 40,
Like
80, 20?
Strictly for a stake would be a lot. You got to go pretty heavy weighted towards the stakey, right?
I mean, NBA's a bitch, right? Because they have to stay there all night.
But they're already playing anyway.
Oh, don't justify your greediness, Petty.
Actually, I'm curious. What do you think? What do you think I gave him? So I'm fully staking him, so he doesn't lose anything ever. I take all loss potential. He's playing 6K a night from
70-30. I don't know. What do you think, RikkiDee? What is it?
I'd say something in that range, 80-20, 70-30.
I gave him 65-35.
Oh, okay.
And he said no.
65 U, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
For no downside
that
risk.
sounds fair.
Free roll.
And obviously, if he did well, I'd move him up. I mean, I'd be incentivized to.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And also, if he can, is there makeup?
No, we didn't even get to that part. I don't really understand poker makeup. Like, this guy like my slave as long as he's down. I don't understand.
Yeah, like you would just keep staking him, and then until he grinds back to even, then he can quit.
Yeah.
Or until you send him back to the Law and Order sets where he belongs. Let me ask you a question, Petty Theft, because it sounds like you're not worried about your own personal edge with like the sim stuff, but are you concerned about the overall ecosystem drying up? Like, you might be able to keep doing well, but are you worried about people, falling off, the prize pools getting smaller, just the longevity for you to continue to realize your edge?
Sure. I think the prize pool is the biggest issue for me. But I like 2 or 3 years ago, I said I had 2 more years, and here we are still. I used to be a doomer. Now I'm just kind of riding out whatever it is, and I'll be fine if it ended tomorrow. I'd be okay.
Are you looking for other avenues in the game? I know you were in the Reignmakers streets for a while. I don't even know if that even exists anymore. But like, what else do you look forward to these edge type games?
We don't talk about Reignmakers anymore. That game is horrible.
I agree.
I could rant about that one for a long time, but no, I have other hobbies now. Like, I coach basketball for high school, middle school now, so I do other stuff outside of this that's not financially driven.
What about
Have
basketball?
you guys heard
No, God, no. No,
I was just had this thought when I haven't even said the word Reignmakers in a year. Is that like, are people playing that still? Like, is that even in existence? I see so much best ball content out there. Last year, you definitely saw a decent amount of Reignmakers stuff here and there. I couldn't tell you the last time I saw someone referencing Reignmakers like in a tweet.
There was some big dust up recently about like a card Smiz was able to get,
it was
and everyone
great.
was really upset.
Yeah.
It was great. It was Smizzle had so there's 2-year cards for the previous year. The very first 20 buyers got like their own 2-year card. So Dalvin Cook was Smizzle's card, and when they created the new set of cards this year, they didn't have a Dalvin Cook created yet. I guess he's in like maybe I don't know if he's released or he's switching teams. I can't remember what situation.
He hadn't signed yet. Yeah.
He hadn't signed yet. Okay, so they didn't make a card for him yet. So DK apparently, according to Smizzle, came to him and said, "You have 3 options. One of which was he can choose any of 3 running backs, which are like elite, like Pollard and 2 other good guys. He could take X amount of cash and wait for his card to come, or there's a 3rd option he didn't say." And it was just a complete fuck up where he got to choose his new card over Dalvin Cook, which is a big upgrade. And if I was in Reignmakers, I'd be pissed. But obviously, I got out of there as fast as possible when I learned how terrible it was.
Can I throw another thing at you guys? The Sims. I would say it's hard to argue, even from Petty's point of view, the lesser combo sports, so MMA, tennis, showdowns, and not the power of Sims there, because there's just only so many lineups you can even make on a short slate MMA field. And if you got a decent like dupe calculator, etc., Sims ends that edge for everyone.
Yeah. I mean, gotta be. And there's certain guys that seem to love those sports because it's been really exploitable for a long time. Like I think Osimo's like barely plays any sport except MMA, and like some of those other kind of fringe sports. So I think that's because Sims haven't really got there. It doesn't have enough eyeballs, and I think it's going to be a quick drop in expected value there.
Yeah,
because it's so easy to understand how exploitable it is.
In NFL too, like some slates, not every slate. Some slates there's a lot of combos, but on those slates where like there's like a bunch of guys who are like 0.1, 0.4 point projected. Like if more than a few percent of the field is taking them, like then there's no point even taking them. Those lineups are worthless. And so like if the people entering the lineups, and you figure they are, if they're max entering, they're spending $300 on the sim, they're probably smart enough to then slightly adjust. And now it's just this balanced field of smart entries, where before people were like duping 1,000 times, like pros.
Well, kind of sort of, it's funny we mentioned Reignmakers, because another thing I was going to ask both of you guys is innovation necessary to create new games that are still like, somewhat related to the core game? I actually think, what under some of the underdog best ball offerings, the weekly winners, eliminator, they're just like slightly different tweaks. You still get to draft, but there's massive edges in it because the game hasn't been solved. There's no data. There's nothing on it. Reignmakers, for as much of its failings, at least it was a relatively innovative concept. And I know a lot of sharp people piled in there to take advantage of that edge. Like, is innovation in the DFS ecosystem something you guys would like to see? Do you want new games to solve, or do you just want to squeeze what's left of this until it's gone?
I'll go first, I guess. I actually think Reignmakers was a great idea. They just executed it way too fast. It got pushed about 6 months faster than it should have been. They should have used last season to kind of ease it in and fix everything. There was no roadmap, no idea what they wanted to do. They were kind of doing things on the fly, and it created disorganization, and it crushed the product, quite frankly. They lowered the prize pool this year, which, I mean, if that doesn't say fail, I don't know what it is. But for me personally, I'm just strangling DFS as long as I can. And then I never heard Ricky talking earlier about how he doesn't want to be in gambling. It sounded like much anymore. I'm fine just leaving the space.
Yeah, I think with I've had this sort of mind, like there's 2 options. Like you said, you either find the next thing and try to be there first, or you really dig down and like develop the next like tier of tools or whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
Now, there's arguments for both sides. Like if you really dig your heels deep, you really can push yourself to learn, fascinating new things about, statistical analysis or programming or whatever it is. You can really develop a good skill set that can really be applicable to a lot of other things in life. If you're sort of just hopping from one edge thing to the next, just trying to be there first, I would say that's less of a long-term valuable way of approaching it. And you could, so I would personally try to squeeze something as much as I can and try to, advance higher in the skill. But, that's just my personal preference.
I was going to say exactly what Ricky just said. So like it's either the next thing that people like where you can make money. Like that's hopefully something cool comes around. Unfortunately, it seems like that's best ball. I like best ball.
Yeah.
I just don't think the edge is huge. And I don't think, I mean, when we're looking at, poker to DFS to best ball, like let's just, sports betting's in there too. It's just like the skill gap is pretty dramatic all the way down to best ball, in my opinion. Now, I don't know everything. So I'm going to look into best ball a lot more this year. So like, especially like the Sundays, and, try to develop my tool to like something more my speed where I don't really have to pay attention to it. I could get 150 in there, and I'm really more worried about what lineups it's getting me in the portfolio balancing, and like what projections I'm using and how that reacts with the rankings and stuff like that. But yeah, Rikkdee hit the nail on the head. You can either be one of the first ones in the next thing, or you just have to ramp up. The only thing that I would add is, besides like trying to ramp up from a technology standpoint, you could also ramp up like a Petteytheft and just like watch all, a ton of sports and get an edge.
No ball.
Yeah. You gotta watch that tape, or some other tricks that you could develop that don't require, a ton of technology too. You could figure some of that stuff out, but it is, good luck. Good luck.
Well, the thing with best ball too, I think an obvious way to get a lot more action down would be to develop your own automated tools that would draft for you with very simple logic. It wouldn't take much from a programming perspective to do that. I don't know if the sites would allow it, but that would get me interested in being able to just set like whatever logic and then just let it run constantly. Because the whole time aspect of best ball is severely limiting in terms of my interest.
Well, I guess what I was trying to hint at with that question is, like, say DraftKings tomorrow came out with this thing and they're going to alter the showdown format. They're going to add assistant to the regional captain for Brian. And then they're going to add this really crazy wrinkle too, that in the fourth quarter of games, everyone picks one additional player to add to their lineup. And so from like a coding and a sim process like this, you have to start from square one. Would you be excited about that proposition? Or would you be like, you know what, I'd rather just kind of, wring out whatever edge is left in this current game that costs me no more work?
I'll answer first, I guess. I think it's moot. Like that matters a year ago or before, not anymore, because now it's Saber Sim and Stochastic and run your Sims job. Like now they just have to go find the new rule and adjust their sim. Like I don't see it like if it's that much different. Now you could maybe make the rule so weird that it breaks everything, and then I mean, is it even beatable anymore? Like, would be a main question. Is it just making it so random that no one could win?
But maybe my example wasn't great. I'm saying like maybe it's like a completely different game type that you play on there that everyone is having. That isn't just Run the Sims and those guys tweaking their stuff. That everyone has to learn it from scratch.
Is everyone going to play?
Yeah, that's why in this world, the prize pools are big. Yeah, I'm just asking, do you have, because Ricky's talking about wanting to get out of the space. I'm saying if there's another game, another form of gambling, do you even have the intellectual curiosity to like want to tackle it and beat it?
I think most guys like us would say yes. They want to always identify the next sort of edge game that's available. And I'm just saying I'm kind of done with that chase. I think it's very empty. But I think there's always going to be opportunities to find new edge games and ways to beat games. And especially when you develop this sort of like algorithmic sim process, it's very applicable to these new things. So I think, anyone who's not totally burnt out and not looking for, a healthy way to exist, they should always continue to find new edge games like that. And they should look forward to them. And
What was that version they had for like 6 months? 4 or 5 years ago, you guys remember? It was like a 6-man, like you pick 6 players, no positions or something.
Tears.
No, it wasn't Tears. It was slightly different.
Is it Tears still going?
Yeah, well, it's still going means.
Yeah.
What was it called? Anyways, if something like that came, what?
The speed draft, like flash draft?
No. It was DFS, but you pick like 6 guys. like no positions on DraftKings. I can't remember it. I'm not crazy. I promise you this existed. I had like a whole system for it, and then they just got rid of it. But if something like that, they just like a new version and everyone's playing it and it's $1 million a first, like hell yeah, I think that'd be fun, for now. It's fun. It's funner than, watching the Sim Wars go down and petty theft take everyone's money.
It's not so bad. It's not too bad.
Brian, have you considered trying to know ball as a way to level up to petty theft?
I haven't watched a basketball game in like 6 years.
You're getting on Petty for not willing to code. Petty should be getting on you for not willing to grind some film.
He picked the right side. I was wrong. He was right. What do you want me to say?
Brian, you might spend a couple hours to be profitable now. It's gonna be tough, man.
Yeah. I might not play NBA this year. I don't know.
That's what they all say.
RikkiDee quit.
It was a quick drop. It was an easy drop.
Let's do some final comments here. Maybe a little outlook of, if we circle back to do this in a year, what spot are we in? Are we having the exact same conversation? Are things actually different? Is the ecosystem different? Brian, what do you think?
I want to hear from Petty Theft too also, but like, do you think your outlook is for you, or like just like the average Joe? You think Sims benefit even the average Joe, or?
So I heard you guys talking about this earlier. I think Sims definitely benefit average Joe, but the Sims can't be afforded by average Joe. Run the Sims, the stochastic, they're charging a lot of money for their Sims. So I don't know how average Joe affords it. If he's playing $50 a night, it doesn't make any sense.
It's also, the product is very, it's you have to be sort of insider knowledge to even kind of understand why it's a valuable product and what it's even doing. Like a guy off the street who's making his toilet shitter lineups or whatever, you're going to be like, let's give him a sim for a weekend. And he's just it's going to spit out some roster he hates. Right. And he's not going to understand why it's good, why it's valuable. And there's just going to be this massive gap in knowledge. Like ultimately gambling comes down to keeping those guys in the ecosystem. Right. But those guys are just going to get fleeced more and more as you introduce these tools. So it's kind of this weird catch-22.
FJ Bourne is in the chat. Arcade, who's called Arcade.
Oh, I do remember that name.
Yeah, DFS bros.
I do remember the name art. Yeah.
Showdown.
I would say in a year from now, we're looking. It's just. I'm a doomer on it. I think the edge is small enough now. There's the idea of becoming a pro is something you probably shouldn't consider unless you're an absolute insane person, which is what it takes anyways. So you're going to, that person's going to do it anyways. And they're probably,
there's a couple guys that have risen up the ranks recently, that BG Sareth guy.
Yeah, I was just thinking him. Yeah.
He just crushed, absolutely murdered the past year. And I'm sure he's had a very advanced process. So if you're like a really smart guy and you can really understand the sim process, there's probably still some opportunity, but there's probably other opportunities in this world that are just as lucrative, that if you have that sort of really elite skill set. So, I'm not sure it's the greatest way to go.
Well, they're insane if they're turning down 65-35 free rolls to work with petty theft, right? That's the trademark of this guy. Yeah.
Do you guys think Oxen Duck just has not returned to this plane of existence, or was he just hot?
We just got a glimpse of a burnt out star. They burn hot.
He actually DM'd me, not about a steak, but he's asking about what was going on. The Oxen Duck is around.
He was curious about your tweet.
Yeah, he was curious about it. If he asked for a steak, I would have staked him on the spot.
Yeah, it was 80-20 the other way.
Yeah, I'd give it all.
Rick,
yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say if you had any other final thoughts on all this.
Well, there was just one more. There was one more case that I was just thinking about. I don't know if you're familiar with, the Burrito Bo's Papa Gates. He's going turned into an AI thread bro.
Really?
So, yeah. Have you seen him, Martin Crowley?
I haven't.
Yeah,
really?
Check him out. Yeah. So that's another.
Wait, so that is him?
That's him. I mean, it
looks just like him.
It would be pretty. It is him, and I've never confirmed it with him, but he has definitely worked into a whole new, a whole new angle into the world, and he's playing way less DFS in general, right? He basically just plays football.
They both.
So yeah, so that's just that type of thing. I'm kind of talking about. I wouldn't recommend becoming an AI thread bro, but it is something that I think it's basically what I was saying. Like there's an option to continue with DFS and gambling or just find a whole new way to utilize your skill sets.
I mean, I would love to find something else cool. No one has contacted me or given me a good idea.
Contacted you. Yeah. We'll figure it out. We always have.
Hot naked girls doing yoga, Brian. Have you ever thought about that?
For that, you know.
Well, Petty, appreciate
AI
you.
girls.
There you go. That's right. We all become thread bros eventually. Ricky, RikkiDee Petteytheft, you guys got nothing to plug here. You just want, the phone shitter bros to pile in to these contests while we still got them.
Bring them all in. And if you're a good winning player, come in my DMs. I can stake you. That's what we're here for.
You got to come with the receipts for Broto Tracker for that to work out. What was your funniest response you had to send back to someone? Like there were some that had to have just been absolutely insulting to have wasted your time with how bad it was.
There was a lot of them. I couldn't even tell you one off the top of my head. There's graphs that are going the wrong way real quick.
They just need their break. They just need their break, man.
Yeah. I mean, you want the top left, you want the graphs up top left to go like bottom right, like a finishing position graph. There's guys who are the exact opposite. I was astounded.
Oh, I've staked in poker before and DFS a little bit, but does not surprise me in the slightest.
Yeah.
All right, Brian, did we hit all the notes you were hoping to hit for this doom and gloom show here?
Yeah, I think so. What about, a year from now, 2 years from now? What do you guys?
I think we're still having the same relative. In a year from now, I think we're definitely jumping the shark a little bit here, or I don't know if that's the right term, but I think a year from now, it's not going to be an obvious shift in, field makeup, and there's still a lot of casual players, especially in NFL. So I think the doom and gloom is probably a little early, but in terms of like how to prepare for it mentally, where this is going, right? We all know that the general direction of where gambling goes, and it's a race to the bottom at some point, and it's just a matter of when you're personally ready to call it quits,
right? Travis, what do you got? Year from now, everyone's rich.
Yeah, everyone's rich. No, I think I'm looking more for my personal. I think I'll be fine. I think the guys who do sims already, I think their edge is getting pretty crowded all of a sudden. So those guys are going to have to rethink what they do, maybe spend more than 5 minutes a day on their stuff. It's going to be a little tougher.
Just got to watch ball.
Yep.
Yeah.
See, Brian's throwing in the towel, and all I felt is just inspired to know ball so fucking inside and out. I'm going to become the petty theft of the NFL until my eyes bleed watching.
Ball out, baby.
I love
That's
it.
right. Appreciate you guys hanging out. This is Lulz. We're here every Thursday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern. There won't be a show next week. I'll be traveling to Vegas to do some fantasy drafts, and then Brian and I will be back in the saddle. And Brian, I think, said you just are going to screen share and do your entire sim process in season now that the edge is gone, right? You're just going to show everyone what you do.
I'm just going to put it on GitHub.
Give this open source. There we go. All right, guys. I'll be back tonight at 8 p.m. for the randomizer finale with Brett Coleman and a Best Ball After Dark with Bill Barnwell. Appreciate you guys. As always, thanks again to RikkiDee and Petteytheft. For Brian, I'm Pete. We'll see you.